Hello, everybody. My name's Vic Gilgis, and I'm here with this podcast. It's episode 41, EP41 A Christmas Present. And the reason I do these videos is to help you with your well-being, and it also helps me with my well-being. And because it's Christmas coming up, I've decided to have a Christmas theme here, and it is basically ho ho ho, Merry Christmas to you all. I'm hoping this podcast will blow your socks off, because I'm going to give some substance to how we tick and understand ourselves, and therefore can operate better in the world and give ourselves that well-being and better life that we all want. So, as the old comedian would say, Tommy Trinder, you lucky people. I think Tommy Trinder, I'm sure my age now, was a 50s comedian. And, a musical entertainer, very good guy, really. And that's what he used to say. So, I want to start off by relating it all to Charles Dickens' book, A Christmas Carol. And just recently, in fact last week, I saw a film called Christmas Karma, which was quite faithful to Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol, except it was brought to modern day. It was very interesting, and all the lessons that come from it were nowadays, and so it was interesting. Now, the Christmas Carol, Charles Dickens, was about Scrooge, who was a mean-spirited person. And what happens in I've not read the book actually. I've seen various versions of through film of Alistair Sim's version. I thought was the best, but the Muppets version very good as well. It's all good stuff. And excuse me. What happens is that you see how Scrooge is lonely, miserable. He's messed up his life, and he's compensating for it all by making more and more money, and he's becoming meaner and meaner and separating himself from the world. And then what happens is that during he's told by his deceased partner Marley that he's got to alter his ways, because Marley is in perpetual suffering because of the way he behaved, and he's saying to Scrooge, don't be like me, end up in chains in purgatory, change, and I'm going to ensure that you change, because 3 spirits are going to come and visit you. And so this is what happens, is that the spirit of Christmas past, Christmas present, and Christmas to be visit Scrooge during the night. And when Scrooge awakes on the Christmas morning, he is a changed man. Now, so I'm going to relate to this through explaining about the principles, which are in a way the gifts that the 3 principles, as revealed to us by Sydney Banks. I'm going to show how that gift, which is always with us, is very similar to that great writer Charles Dickens, and the way in which he told the story of the ghosts of the spirits that visited Scrooge. Now, what I'm going to do is just jump a little bit before I go on to Sydney Banks to put this in context. And I'm going to go back to a chap called William James, 1844 to 1910, who was called the father of American psychology. He was the president of the American Psychological Society. In fact, he was the president of psychic societies and similar type things. Philosophical Society was the president. He's a brilliant guy. Now, what he said was, and at that time they were trying to understand psychology. And what he said then, back then, all that time ago, is that a definition of psychology does not exist, and it is needed because they were all over the place. And in fact, since then, the psychology has gone more onto dealing with behavioural aspects and why that happens, and dealing with the behaviour that people have which are not helpful to them and to others. But in 1973, a man called Sydney Banks, born in Scotland, I'll just look at his, Sydney Banks, 1931 to 2009. In 1973, he revealed to us the three principles of mind, consciousness and thought. And of course this is now over 50 years ago. And the three principles are not definitions. They are not strategies. They are not concepts. They are, as Sydney Banks explained, the basis of how we actually tick as humans. And so what Sydney Banks said was that we are all the same. We all have mind, consciousness and thought, which I'll mention in a moment. So he was saying from the vagabond to the king, from the prince to the pauper, we've all got this basic things within us from which we operate. And so if I just briefly mention these, and I've mentioned them in previous podcasts, but I'll mention this specifically in relation to Charles Dickens' Three Spirits of Christmas, and we'll come back to that. But what Sydney Banks said was that we, because of the three principles, we have thought, the power of thought. And what that means is that we are able to see what is right in front of us in the world. And the reason that we can see what is right in front of us is because we are conscious. So we have consciousness. So we look out on the world, and not just look out visually, but we can hear, see, feel, touch, smell, sense what is going on. And our consciousness is our awareness. And the thing about consciousness is that it puts bells and whistles on whatever thought we have. So when I would, after my mother passed, I once found a bottle of her perfume called Evening in Paris. I came across it in a box, and as soon as I smelt it, the perfume, the little thing on, the dabber, I call it, it just scenes of my mother and my father, my mother going out with my father, came to me. And that's what I mean by consciousness. It's a gift that it really illustrates in 3D all the senses, all the awareness, all the, as I said, the bells and whistles of a particular thought. And that's why it's a good thing and a bad thing. So if it's a good thought, it's brilliant because, there's the dog and the pony and the show and the firecrackers and the music and the sounds and the romance. But it can be just the opposite, a bad thought. It can be the drudgery, the regrets, the misery, the tightness. That's what consciousness does, because consciousness just picks up on a thought and turns it into reality for us. Now, let me just say that when I've just explained thought and consciousness is such a gift, that we have that ability to be able to have that. We have what Sid Banks said, the formless, because it hasn't yet come into being. It's just there, of awareness, of consciousness that we have, and the ability to think. The the metaphor that is used is like thinking is the sky, and when things go through the sky, it picks up on it. But it is the sky, it is the ability to think. It's not the particular thoughts, it's the fact that we have the gift of thought. And consciousness picks up on particular thoughts and brings it to life. So they are both gifts. The gift of being able to have thought, the gift of being able to have consciousness. So there are three things, the three principles. The third one being, and they're all the same, they're all linked together, one can't work without the other, is what Sydney Banks called mind. Now, what Sydney Banks said about mind was, and I find this difficult to explain because I don't fully understand it, and in fact, I mean, what Sid Banks would even say is it can't be understood because it is intelligent energy. It is the intelligence of life. If you want to say God, that could be the word that you might want to use. So he called it mind. So not this mind, but mind with a capital M. It is intelligent energy, universal intelligence. In other words, the intelligence that runs the universe, which holds the stars in position, which is the universe is expanding. It knows how to, it is life, and it's energy, and it has got intelligence, and that runs through us. And Sydney Banks said this is our backstop. This is the fact that exists, that we have mind, consciousness and thought. What he also said was that personal thought can keep us away from being able to listen better to the messages or the intelligence or the wisdom that mind is there always in the background to offer us. So when you look at it, the wonderful gift that we've got of mind, consciousness and thought means that we can have thoughts of and thought is the most powerful thing. This is like the in other words, it is thought that can create paintings, the Mona Lisa, great symphonies, great ideas, and like Einstein's theory of relativity. So thought can do wonderful things. but also thought, as well as giving us freedom and liberation and enjoyment and beautiful things, can also, it's a two-edged sword, can be quite destructive if our thoughts are of insecurity, war, destruction, depression. Or, in other words, that's the personal thought can destroy us, or it can give us a good life. And that's why I want to refer back to Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. So when we look at Scrooge, the ghost of Christmas past takes us to a life where Scrooge fought his way in the world, and so one route forward was making money, and that became his main focus. Greed, accumulating money. He didn't really care about other people, just money, and because of that he lost the love of his life, because he thought more about money. And she pointed, this is why, she wasn't happy with him. It was because she knew he cared more about money than her. So that is the ghost of the spirit of Christmas past. Now, if you relate this to the three principles and what Sydney Banks had to say, and since then, 50 years of it, the practitioners of the principles, and I listen to them because I learn from them, they would say, well, no, the past, it happened, but when we think about the past, we always think about it in the now, because the only time that we have is now. That's the present. And that's the gift that we've got, in the present all the time. Oh, that's the present, yeah. That's the joke as well. And so if we look back at that and live by that, so we are living by what has driven us then, or things that actions we took then that had bad consequences, and we relate to that now, to that memory, then that can upset us and cause us to have behaviour that is not helpful to us, because it's coming from a bad place. Now, the good thing about being in the present is that we can choose to understand what's going on, that the past is no longer with us, that we are in the present and that we have choices, and that we can look back and say, well, some of the choices that we made in the past, maybe because because we could say that we were innocent, because we did what we thought was the right thing at the time. And you could call that sinning. We all sin. We all did what we thought was right at the time, but we can all learn from what happened. And when we're in the now, we cannot let the bad stuff drive us. So the past is finished. We are always in the now. Now, when Scrooge was presented with the ghost of Christmas present, he was shown how difficult life was for other people. The people he employed that he was not very nice to, and their families. Tiny Tim in particular, who was very ill, and his relatives, which he poo-pooed really, because they didn't think of saving money and were frivolous, and wanted to just enjoy things and not be serious about always saving money like he was. And he didn't realise that we're humans. So the present is there with us to be able to use with the understanding of the three principles in a very useful way. Because if we are upset by our thinking, as Sid Banks explained, that is a wonderful signal to us to realise through our feeling of things not being right, that is a signal to say that we're dwelling, ruminating, going over, raking up stuff that is not helpful, that our personal mind is consumed with focusing on a particular thought. And what he said was, our thoughts are what we make up, with that we live in a thought-created reality. So in other words, something happens in the outside world, but it still goes through our personal thought system, and we all interpret things in our own particular individual way. And one of the ways to help us here is when we can see through the knowledge of the three principles that thought is what we make up, and that when we take thought seriously, particularly bad thoughts seriously, we can end up running around with behaviour that it comes from insecurity and trying to alter things to put right the bad feeling we're getting from a bad thought. That is not helpful, particularly when that thought, because it is a thought, cannot hurt us. And that's what we don't see, is that a thought cannot hurt us because it's a thought, and it is what we make up. It is not real. We're living in a thought-created reality. And if we think that reality is the sky is going grey, this thing's going to attack us, life is terrible, oh my dear. Well, that's the type of defending and constricted life that we're going to live. In other words, we put ourselves into a cage of our own making, and instead of us being able to, and that cage is locked because we've locked it, and all we're doing is ruminating in the cage of ways in which to overcome any fear or insecurities or upsets that we have, we're still stuck in that cage. And that the only way in which we can open the cage is to realise that we're just dwelling on thought. And that there is another type of thought which comes from the intelligence and wisdom of mind. And that means that when we stop listening to our personal thoughts, or realise that the more we listen to our personal thoughts, the more we make them real. It's like water being frozen into ice made solid, that they are not solid. They can hold us back. If we have insecurities and fears, our mindset is always working from that bad position. When we're in the position of looking at possibilities, because we're not confined by our personal thought system, making us feel defensive and reactive, then we're open to more possibilities. We're open to not listening to our personal thought system. We're open to listening because it's always there to the wisdom that is behind mind. In other words, the intelligence of the universe. I refer to it better as life energy. It knows what to do. It wants us to survive. It wants us to thrive. And when we go quiet to our personal thinking, because the principles have explained what the situation is, that we're always playing with the house's money, which is abundance. Life is abundant. It wants us to thrive. We don't have to give something in order to receive something. There is plenty there. It's the house's money. It's mind's money. It's life's knowingness of what to do, and it will always be there through intuition, tapping us on the shoulder. We get a knowing of what to do because it's there. In other words, mind, consciousness and thought works together. So the wisdom that comes from mind comes into our thought system, so you get to know what to do, and consciousness picks up on this and puts bells and whistles and all, gives it all the 3D characteristics and brings it to life. So we've got that gift there. Now, when we relate this to Scrooge, then say, for example, we take the ghost of the spirit of yet to be, the future. Now, the way in which the Principles looks at this is to say there is no future. We're always in the now. In fact, our future, when it arrives, will, for us, be in the now. And when we operate in the now, from the way in which I've just explained, where we have confidence, we have a knowings, we work with life, then that will always make us for a better future. So, in other words, when Scrooge was told, this is your terrible future, and Charles Dickens was right, because he said, is this fixed? Is it terrible? Will Tiny Tim die? Well, we're all going to die. But what he was saying was, well, can this badness be changed? Can my loneliness be changed? Can my greed be changed? Could I help others? Could I have compassion for others? Could I be happier? What the spirit of Christmas Future was saying, well, this is all possible, but, this is the lesson you've been learning, is that in the now, if you change in the now, yes, you make a different future. And so that's what the Principles say, is that in the now, we're always in the now. And when we don't let what I would call the gravity or the heaviness of the past, if there is any heaviness, that's another way I'd like to just talk about that, is that we're all built differently, but when I go back through my life, I see it as a series of adventures. So when it comes to things that have gone wrong for me, I tend to look at the side of it, well, this taught me a lesson, so instead of doing that, I did this. And another thing, and I call it luck, but and it's, in a way it is luck, that I manage. A phrase I use is, if I fell in the dock, I wouldn't. I come from a Hull, a dockland, and a phrase used, if you fell in dock, you wouldn't get wet, and that was always lucky people. Whereas if somebody else fell in the dock, they'd end up being drowned. Now, I think it is to do with an attitude, a way of life, is that I think that I've seen life as synchronicities, something has come along to help. I have faith that it will come along. So even when I'm down in the dumps, I don't dwell on that. I dwell on making a better now. Because a better now, operating better in the now with a more positive mindset, will always give you a better future. So I don't know if I've explained that properly, but when we look at the past, going back to the bad past, you could say that Scrooge was traumatised. And a lot of people would say I'm traumatised. A lot of people would, yeah. So if we look at that in the sense that traumatised is still a thought. And so if all the details of that trauma are dealt on, instead of looking at it as what really triggered that, and I'll go into this in future podcasts, is being curious about why something at the time, or something now triggers us. So we can say, well, that event in my life and those circumstances left me with a bad feeling, with an upsetness, with a feeling of lack, making me depressed. Is the more we go into the ins and outs of that, the worse it gets, because the mind is going to find ways of feeling a victim, but it's also going to try and which it cannot do, is live a better past. Well, which you cannot do. In other words, oh dearie me, I'm left with this terrible situation. Woe is with me. Nothing can be done about it. Well, it can, because the point is, when you are curious about why you were triggered, then there is always something. You understand how you tick, and basically, you can see when you are being triggered. You can see when bad thinking, upset thinking comes into your mind, and you can't control that, it can. But you have a choice of whether or not to stick with it. Because if you stick with it, your consciousness, which puts bells and whistles on it, will gladly make a whole pantomime about the whole thing. So I make a pantomime about all my adventures in the past, and when I got out of scrapes, and wasn't this bad, but this is what I was able to do, and then this happened, this person helped me, and wasn't I lucky at this? And yeah, yes, luck is involved, but the point is, you only get luck if you move forward into new circumstances where there are opportunities for possibilities to come along, and with a better frame of mind, instead of fear. Oh yeah, I will have a go at that. Instead of fear, which says, oh no, I can't do that. I'm me. This is terrible. I'm Scrooge, and I cannot change. I just cannot change, and I don't want to change. Well, Charles Dickens showed in The Christmas Carol that is quite possible. That change can be. A man like Scrooge, as he did do, became benevolent, a beloved member of, a valued member of society. He made friends, he was generous, and he was happier. And in fact, in the book, he wakes up on Christmas morning and says, I don't know how this has all happened, that I'm so changed, but of course the spirits that did it all in one night, of course they can, because they are the spirits. And that is Sydney Banks's mind. The intelligence of life helps us. It can do it overnight. It might take longer than overnight, but it can do it. And then Charles Dickens also said in his Christmas Carol, I feel like a child. I feel dizzy. I feel lightheaded. In other words, what he was pointing to was he's not using his serious intellectual mind, which says, I've got to have more money, and to make more money, I've got to fight off this and do that. I've got to, in other words, what he's saying, no, I can be childlike and start to love and enjoy life again and be friendly and stop all the fight. In fact, once I do this and become happier, all those things will fall into place anyway, because they always do better when you come from a place of happiness. In fact, I was listening to a programme about the writer behind Jack Reacher. I forget the name of him. Lee Childs, I think. And because he retired from his writing, and his brother now writes the Jack Reacher books. And he was asked when he retired from writing, did you retire to be happy? And he said, no. I became happy, and because of that, I then retired. And so that's the way. In other words, when you get it, when you get that you've got these three things behind you, that you've got everything. Instead of a lot of us, basically, the fly in the ointment is our personal thinking, especially when it looks on the dark side. Right, so I think I've said everything I need to say. Wishing you a Merry Christmas. You've got the three spirits with you. They are formless, they're energy, and when it comes into form, when you work from them, you've always got the ability to move forward in life in a better way, as you will do, I'm sure, and hopefully in the new year. So, right, a little bit of relaxation. The way in which we can do this is to relax the body and the mind. Just calm the mind down. All this going over, when it settles, that's when the clarity comes. And also, with a relaxed mind, we can relax our body. And there's many ways in which we can relax our body and our mind. For example, just take yourself to some place you'd love to be. Maybe it's a holiday, or in a cafe with a friend, a romantic connection with a loved one somewhere, say in Paris or Italy. It's my favourite. So you're there, a place you'd love to be. That's a lovely thought. So imagine also that you're just relaxing with loved ones and friends. That's nice. You're okay. So right from top of our head, soft scalp, relaxed brow, relaxed cheek, right down, relaxed jaw, your jaw's relaxed, soft neck, down to your shoulders, no bend, just relaxed shoulders, upper arms relaxing, down to your forearms relaxing. That's right, just easy, tension loosening off, soft chest, belly relaxed, just supported right down to your buttocks on the chair, down to your thighs, easy, down there, relaxed, down to your calves, relaxed, just easy rotation of the ankles and the foot, right down to the little tips of your toes, just down, relaxed, easy, so gentle, just feeling okay, thanking your body. It does everything without you telling it, just like mind does. Sydney Banks' mind does everything. We're being looked after. So gentle, so relaxed. So if you bring yourself back into the room, thank you for listening. I hope it's been helpful. Have a good Christmas. Take care and enjoy yourselves. Thank you very much.